Congressman Steve Cohen, welcome back to Skulduggery.
Skulduggery is good, sometimes. I passed a bill in Tennessee once, and I called it the Anti-Skulduggery Act.
Right. You
It
told
was an
this
ethics
story.
We heard this story
Have I?
on Skulduggery, actually, the last time.
Yes. So Speaker Pelosi said this week, after the blow up at the White House, she's praying for the President of the United States. Are you praying for Donald Trump?
No.
So you're not following the Speaker on this one?
No, if I was praying for anything, it'd be praying for the Donald Trump successor.
Right.
That he may come soon.
All right. Well, you have been one of those at the forefront of advocating impeachment. You had sponsored an impeachment resolution in the last session of Congress. You're among those who are frustrated that things haven't moved more rapidly. Where are you right now, and where are your colleagues in the House on the question of impeachment?
I believe he has definitely committed many impeachable offenses, and he should be impeached. Most of my colleagues on the Judiciary Committee think that way, but we're a different breed. People who get on the Judiciary Committee care passionately about the Constitution, not to say that others don't, but not as passionately as we do to make it our first choice. And we are charged with the responsibility of defending the Constitution, and I'm the chairman of the subcommittee on the Constitution. So we're a special breed, and I'd say most of us, I've been quoted as saying 90%, and it probably is about 90%, are in favor of impeachment.
Well, that suggests,
on this.
I mean, since it's the Judiciary Committee that has the power to do so, that you could impeach the president right now.
If we were
So
allowed
what are you
to vote
waiting
on
for?
it. Well, you have to have the blessings of the chairman, and he has to have the blessings of the speaker. And the speaker is
Does he
praying
really
for
have to have the
Donald
blessings?
Trump, but she's not blessing the impeachment.
Could you vote in committee? I mean, I understand politically, I understand realistically, you're not going to defy Nancy Pelosi, but I just wonder the rules of the committee rules. Could you vote to impeach President Trump in committee if Chairman Nadler was so inclined?
Well, I think I guess you could, because you'd have a resolution that'd be introduced in the Congress, and it'd be referred to committee, and it'd be referred to Judiciary, and so he'd just have to schedule it, and we could vote it out after hearings. So if it's introduced, it'll be referred, like Sheila Jackson Lee put in what's called an inquiry of impeachment, which John Lewis and Joaquin Castro and I are co-sponsors, maybe more at this time. That'll be referred to the Judiciary Committee.
That's to initiate an impeachment inquiry.
Right.
It's not to impeach, it's to begin the process.
Yeah, and it's kind of
Right.
technical, because once you start, then you could say, all right, we've found it. We've come across the 23-minute tape or the smoking gun or whatever. Let's impeach the guy. And then you could have articles drawn up from impeachment, and I guess they could be spontaneous through the committee, I guess. The committee could draw them and pass them out after an inquiry. I don't think you'd have to have a resolution introduced in Congress, but if you would, that would be simple enough to do.
Okay, but it's not going to happen as long as Nancy Pelosi is not in favor of impeachment, I presume. And
That's right.
She said, as we taped this today on Thursday, she said today that the Democratic caucus is not on a path to impeachment. But you would like to persuade her otherwise. So you have been trying to do that. So what is your argument, and are you going to continue, and is she persuadable?
I guess she's persuadable. She's a smart woman, and I just disagree with her perspective. I agree with what I think was laid out by Sidney Blumenthal, and then I saw Jill Wine-Bank's supportive tweet about it, that the Watergate Senate hearings took the public opinion about Nixon from about 17 or 18%, where they are now for Trump, up to about 57%. Now, there were the facts that were contained in the Nixon administration, but they're very parallel to, in my opinion, to the Trump administration: obstruction of justice and obstruction of Congress. What Trump has done, not to respond to subpoenas, not to produce documents, is obstruction of Congress's investigative role, as permitted through Article 1 and part of our inherent jurisdiction, what we do. That to me is an impeachable offense. And I think Mueller laid out obstruction of justice with the Mueller report. He tried to get McGahn to go and get Sessions to unrecuse himself and to fire Mueller and to say and lie about it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he tried Comey to lay off of Flynn and say nice things about him and that Trump wasn't a subject and an object and whatever, all those kind of. And they got rid of Comey and got Rosenstein to draw up some factual failures of Comey, but not the reasons for him to have fired him, because as he said to Lester Holt, it was that Russia thing, which he celebrated with Kislyak and the
All right, but
White House.
you've got all this evidence. It's laid out in the Mueller report. I'm not quite sure I understand the strategy here of what the Judiciary Committee is doing, because you and a lot of others think the evidence is already there. So what do you think more hearings and more process is going to produce that's going to make this an easier decision politically than it is right now?
Because I think if the American people see exactly what went on, what the Mueller report truly said, that did not just say no collusion and no obstruction, as Barr said in the Cliff Notes for Simpletons.
All right, but how do you do that? McGahn didn't show up. He may come eventually. He's not testifying. Mueller apparently doesn't want to testify in public, and if he does, he's just going to repeat the language in the report. He's not going to be a passionate witness telling you what I really think, which I didn't already put in the report. I'm not quite sure who your witnesses at these hearings that's going to change the views of the American public are going to be.
Well, we don't know that they're not going to be those people. It's going to take a long time in the courts, I guess, but the courts have generally agreed with us that Trump's defenses on taxes and on other matters have not had any legal basis, and they've basically summarily thrown them aside and ruled against him. That's at the district court level, and they can appeal and appeal and appeal.
Right, and that's going to drag it out for months and months, and before you know it, we're going to be into next year, an election year, and that people are going to be focused on that, not on Trump and impeachment.
Well, there might be some people that be willing to testify. We don't know yet. And there might be people that will be good citizens and respond to a subpoena like they're supposed to. And it may come that we don't know what Mueller wants to do. But that's all kind of a mystery. Nobody knows what Mueller will do. Mueller may come and explain why he talked about the fact that you have a right to defend yourself, and that he couldn't charge and say that the president should be charged with obstruction of justice because he didn't have an opportunity to defend himself.
Well, you were hoping to get him this month, and it's not going to happen. So
that doesn't mean it's not going to happen,
and
it doesn't mean that he's not going to say why he didn't put it in the charge. He pretty much laid out that it was because he didn't have an opportunity to defend himself, and he said it, that in a criminal trial or in an impeachment, a congressional action, you have a right to defend yourself, and you don't have a right to defend yourself in a special counsel report. And so he could explain that in more clearly for people that didn't see it, and they'll notice it, and he can make it simple for them. Barr just totally.
Have you ever seen Robert Mueller testify?
Yeah.
It's not the most electric thing in the world to watch.
Not electric, but he tells the truth, and he's believable. He's Rushmore with a little bit of moving lips.
Isn't it? Isn't it the case that Nancy Pelosi's strategy right now is actually working? I mean, she's been saying, okay, let's, we're going to win in the courts, and they have been winning. Democrats have been winning in the courts. I mean, the Deutsche Bank subpoena, federal judge in Manhattan said that Deutsche Bank has to turn over all of their records relating to Trump. Same thing with Trump's accountant. A judge in Washington did the same thing. You've got New York State, which just passed a law saying that he's got to turn over his tax returns to 3 congressional committees. So her argument is, let's let this play out in the courts. It's working, continue to investigate. That's how you build a case. You get the American people behind you, and when you have a case where you can really bring the people with you, and maybe even some Republicans, that's when you launch an impeachment inquiry.
Well, I think that's her theory, and I presume it is. I think that we could get there, but it's going to take a long time in the courts. And what New York State did, of course, is not the courts. That was a legislative action, and I don't think Trump can do anything to appeal that. You can't appeal that. That's a law. They turn over the papers to us. I don't know if he could try to get an injunction to say that we can't look at them. Or
I think I think his lawyers would argue that it's a bill of attainder. Is a legislation that was passed, tailored to one individual, and that may be not legal. But
that'll probably go not very far.
So you think you're going to get his tax returns? I mean, these are the state tax returns, but they're probably very close to what the federal returns are.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So it'll be helpful. I understand it's just a slow process, and it can be appealed all along to the Supreme Court, and then it comes down to one justice. And I have faith that the Chief Justice will support democracy and the rule of law.
So you've had some tense meetings this week within the caucus as more and more members get frustrated with the go slow, let's just investigate strategy of Pelosi right now. And I think the other day at the Steering and Policy Committee, you were quite exercised and said that Donald Trump is raping the country. I think the full context was we impeached Bill Clinton for sex, but Trump is raping the country. Pretty strong words. Give us the context for, how and why you said that and what the reaction was in the room.
It was to stand up and question the direction of the caucus with the speaker and the speaker being present is a pretty tense situation. Most people don't do it. So I think there was a little tension in the air, but there were a couple people that spoke up and supported my position. There were others that spoke and supported Nancy's position, and but it was all in a debate, and there was no ill will. I have no ill will at all. Never have Nancy Pelosi, and I don't think she has it toward me. But speaking truth to power is one of the things a good congressperson should do. And I was in 2007. I was the only member of the Democratic caucus, freshman caucus. We had a large caucus, class of 06, that chose judiciary as my committee, first choice.
Right.
And it's because I care passionately about the Constitution and I grew up in the Watergate world and watched all those hearings, and so to me it's a special calling I have, and I'm chairman of that subcommittee. That means a lot to me, and I just think this man has run roughshod over the law.
So you said like 90% of the of Democratic members on House Judiciary support impeachment right now. How many members in the House overall, you think?
I don't know. Somebody asked me today and for a count, and they said that I haven't done a count. I guess I might find out eventually. But I know it's getting more and more people who have come up to me and said, when are we going to do something, or
right.
What can we do? And I'm getting closer, so
What do you think? 30, 40?
Something like that, probably.
More than 40?
Give or take 40.
Give or take 40, right.
Bigger than a bread box.
You've got a bill, a resolution for impeachment that you've been drafting. When are you going to pop it, and what exactly do you want to impeach the president for?
Well,
Article 1, 2, 3.
November of 2017, I filed articles of impeachment.
Right.
And they included obstruction of justice, emoluments domestic and emoluments foreign, attacks on the judiciary, and attacks on the press. And I've had them annotated to include the obstruction charges that were in the Mueller report and the obstruction of Congress. They're probably drafted within the other sections, but there's two additional areas of impeachable actions by the president. There could be more, but right now that's what we've got, and we're just refining them.
So when do you pop it, and how many co-sponsors will you have?
Hard to say. It was tough to get 17 last time, but we got 17. Al Green, I think, just did his own, and maybe he signed on to Brad Sherman's, who had 2. They haven't looked for co-sponsors. I've had several people come up to me and say they want to be a co-sponsor, and when I do it, they want to be there. I can't say it's been a groundswell, a lot of people, but some. I think that we'll, if we put it in, could be 20, 25, 30 members would be willing to put their name out there.
And when do you do this?
Not necessarily, don't know. I have to see the right time. And the straw that broke the camel's back last time was Charlottesville, but I took 3 months to get it refined and 3 months to look for sponsors, some of whom we thought would have been good for us and good for the resolution, and we thought we'd have them, and they talked a game, but they weren't willing to put their name on the line. When we first introduced it, there were just 6 of us,
right.
And then we worked and we grew it to 17. It took a long time.
So
And it's amazing to see all the people that are running for president. Some of them were in the House with me, and they wouldn't touch it. All of a sudden, they're running on impeachment.
Like who?
Well, all of them. I mean, Beto didn't touch it.
Yeah.
He's for it. Seth Moulton, he didn't touch it.
Yeah.
Now he's for impeachment. Who else is running? Tulsi Gabbard. I think she's for impeachment. I'm not sure, but she didn't touch it.
Yeah.
Swalwell didn't get near it. I think he's for impeachment. I'm not sure. Maybe it's
I think he's come around.
It's come around if you for those people that have a larger constituency.
So when Bill Barr defied your committee subpoena, you famously showed up in the hearing room with a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken.
And a ceramic chicken that's right back there.
And a ceramic chicken, to make the point that that Barr lacked courage for not showing up. But you also did something else. I think you went on CNN and you said that the Congress ought to enforce a subpoena by sending the Sergeant of Arms out to literally arrest the Attorney General and to bring him to Congress. And I guess you'd have to put him in the pokey until he testified. And were you serious about that?
Yeah. I mean, most people, and I've talked to Chairman Nadler and others about it, and they think that we can't do it. It'll be too dramatic, and people might think that's too far to put him in jail. But really what he's done is thumbed his nose at Congress. I'm not coming to testify.
You'd have to deal with his security guards, by the way.
Well, there's some talk about that, but that we would probably, deputize some law enforcement people in the District of Columbia rather than have the Sergeant at Arms do it, and they would probably find a convenient way to do it. And I'm sure he would quickly file some habeas or whatever process he could see to get him out.
But he does have security guards with him at all times. There'd be a gun battle if
I don't think
your
there'd be a gun
DC
battle.
people tried to.
No, there wouldn't be a gun battle.
Where would he
arrest.
have been held? Is there a detention facility in the Congress?
I don't think there is. There's where the little area underneath the stairs where Washington was going to be buried.
Could have
There
just
are
locked him
bars
in.
and
Could have had him in
know,
here.
But we could contract with the district. It's really too hypothetical because it's not going to happen.
Okay.
I mean, it's nice to think of it and whatever.
But you pursued it. I mean, you researched it. You
I
had
think we should
conversations with the chairman about
I think we
this.
should do the maximum we can to have the Congress's authority respected and enforced. And right now it's not being respected and not being enforced. And it's going to take a long time. Harriet Miers took 4 years, her contempt.
But look, for the
so
record on this,
I'm a member of Congress. We're Article 1. Article 1, we're co-equal branches of government, but we fought the Revolutionary War to get rid of a king, a strong monarch. Washington wasn't a strong president. They wanted to put power in the Congress. And that's why it was Article 1. And we're the people's representatives. The House are the people's representatives. The Senate are used to be elected by the state legislatures, but they're elected by the states. They're by the people now. That's only been a 100-year-old phenomenon. We are the people's representatives. We are the real repositories of power. And he's basically thumbed his nose at us. And if we don't stand up for ourselves, who is?
for the record, he was willing to testify before your committee, but
If
he
he set the
objected.
rules.
But he objected to having the committee staff do the work for you. And some could argue,
No,
you
wrong,
guys,
Michael.
no,
Not the committee staff do the work
The
for us.
committee
the
counsel.
the
That's
committee
what the
counsel
issue
to
was.
do additional questioning,
Right.
which was done in many, many, many hearings over the years, including the hearings with Whitewater, where Chertoff was the Republican counsel, and Ben Veniste was the Democratic counsel, and a Watergate, where Fred
Iran-Contra.
Thompson did a lot of them. You name it. It's nothing new. We were not reinventing the wheel. He would be reinventing the wheel by dictating the terms. That's a chicken.
But there was nothing to stop you from doing the questioning, all the questioning yourselves. You're a committee full of lawyers, and it was like
5
you
minutes.
guys were the chickens
Michael,
who were afraid
Michael,
to question
you've never
them
done
on your
it.
own.
You've never done it.
What's that?
You got 5 minutes. 5 minutes
No,
is,
no,
a,
no.
is a limited
Colin-
amount. Michael, 5 minutes is a very limited amount of time to question anybody and to get them to where you want to go, because they can be evasive and they can filibuster, and that's what Whitaker did, and that's what most of them do. And you can only get so far, and then your 5 minutes is up, and it goes to the next guy. If you can do 30 minutes, it's a lot more effective, and it's not reinventing the wheel. And no witness should dictate to Congress on the terms on which they are going to be a witness.
Collins, the ranking Republican, said they were willing to waive the 5-minute rule, and each member could have given extra time deferred to another member. There were lots of ways you could have questioned Barr at length about all the things you wanted to do, but you didn't do it because you wanted to, hold him in contempt.
No, that's not why we did it. We did it
No,
because
but
we
you
thought
could've-
it was
you
right
could've done it.
to do, like precedent has set.
Right.
And there's plenty of precedent for having counsel question. And the counsel would have come at the end. They'd have had 30 minutes. And the fact is, he was afraid of Barry Burke, and he was afraid of Norm Eisen. And an attorney general who was a good, competent, effective person, strong in his opinions about his summary of the Mueller report and his positions on obstruction of justice and the legal bases, would not have been afraid of that. He was afraid. And in 30 minutes, you could tear him apart.
Well,
Have you called for him to resign?
No, that's why I call for him to resign. I mean, that's meaningless. He's going to care.
Yeah.
There's no reason. I mean, I think he should evaporate. But he's not going to evaporate either.
all right.
When he was named to be Attorney General, I had a good friend who told me, "Oh, he's highly respected, and he's a good guy, and he's going to be okay." And I thought, well, maybe he will be. And then I have gradually learned that my friend was wrong.
So look, the Republican narrative on this is, Mueller had 2 years, on lots of money, lots of subpoenas. He came up with what he came up with, did not find a criminal conspiracy between Trump and the Russians. I know you and a lot of others expected there were going to be more indictments, that Don Jr. was going to get indicted.
There are 12 other indictments.
That
There
Kushner
are 12
was
other investigations. We don't know who the subjects are.
Right. But they've been farmed out. Clearly, if Mueller thought that they were central to his investigation, he wouldn't have folded up shop and farmed them out to other offices.
We don't know that.
Well, why did
He
why did
farmed out
fold
Michael Cohen. That was a pretty major thing.
He farmed it because the Southern District had stuff completely
He
unrelated
farmed
to
out
Russia.
some stuff with Roger Stone and with Manafort.
No, he brought the Stone indictment. He brought the Manafort indictment, and
Okay.
then he let others. But my point is, look, they've got their narrative that Mueller spent all this time, all this resources, couldn't come up with the smoking gun showing a criminal conspiracy, and we now have the ongoing Inspector General investigation into the origins of the Russia investigation, the role that the Steele dossier played. Clearly, based on Mueller's report, many of those allegations were not corroborated and substantiated, and yet it was presented to the FISA court as valid, substantiated information. Do you accept that there are legitimate questions about the FBI and how it began the investigation and its use of the uncorroborated Steele dossier in launching the whole Russia investigation to begin with?
No, not at all.
Not at all. Nothing. You
No,
don't see any,
I've read these
as a
books about
civil-
Russia by some
Right,
really
yeah,
distinguished
yeah,
people,
yeah.
and I don't think they agreed either.
Yeah.
The fact is, it was started because of a
The
discussion
Papadopoulos stuff,
in,
right,
in
yes.
Europe, and that's how it
Right.
started. It wasn't the Steele dossier,
But it played a role. If you read the book closely, you'll see and the book, by the way, is Russian Roulette by
Available
myself
at
and David Korn.
Amazon.
Still available on Amazon. But it played a role, and it does look from today's perspective that
Much of what was the Steele dossier was accurate. Maybe Cohen did or did not go to
well,
Prague.
Cohen says
Apparently
he didn't. Mueller says he didn't. I mean, what?
So maybe he
What
didn't.
makes you think he was there?
That maybe that's not the central thing, and maybe that
well,
was wrong.
that was the one. Actually, it was a pretty sensational.
Steele was a
allegation.
reliable informant, and search warrants are based on It's the reliability of the informant and then the reliability of the information. And it was felt that he was a reliable informant. But Papadopoulos, that's where it started. Right. And the fact is, if the FBI would not have pursued that, as they would have been derelict in their responsibility to defend the country, and they did the right thing to look into it, and that they should have looked into it because there was probable cause, and you get into it. So Mueller didn't find conspiracy. He was looking at a criminal conspiracy, guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. There was a lot of evidence of misdeeds, a lot of evidence of interactions between the Russians and the Trump campaign, giving Kalimnik, whatever, the polling results and all of the stuff with the Trump Moscow, which Trump lied about, and Trump going in and fudging with the information, saying it wasn't about sanctions, it was about adoptions, and don't even mention anything about Hillary and the dirt they had on her, and the whole thing was doctored. It was obvious to me that there was enough to say there was a preponderance of the evidence, which is what you need in impeachment, and that they had too many the context. And I think when Deutsche Bank records are going to show, and his income taxes, that the Russians own him, and to have a president who's owned by the Russians, who has lots of contact.
Own him how? Explain that. It's a pretty serious charge.
Yeah, money laundering. Money laundering and cash.
By who, when, where, and what's your evidence of it?
Donald Jr.'s, or I think it was Donald Jr.
Well, no, he said that they got a lot of their business from Russia.
They said they got a lot of their money from Russia. So we don't need money from American banks.
Russians buy condos in Trump Towers. That's a source of revenue for the Trump organization, no question. But what's your evidence that it was money laundering?
Russians buy mansions in Palm Beach and sell them to Trump, and Trump makes lots of money off of them. It's been years and years and years, and they run their money through Cyprus, and where there was Wilbur Ross, but at Cyprus. I mean, it's all there. And the fact is, all those golf courses in Scotland, it was cash. That people say it's just on cash money, and that's what they admitted. We've got all this cash. Who does cash for all that kind of money? Right. You're hiding money.
Right.
And Deutsche Bank was known for laundering Russian money.
Right. And we do have the recent information that there were people at the bank in 2016-17 who thought there were suspicious transactions going on. But
So there could have been enough and even in Section 1 for impeachment. There can be there.
But
just
we've
because
gone from could have been from where you started.
I'm starting an obstruction of justice.
Owned him.
I do think the Russians own him, but you need Deutsche Bank and its taxes will, I believe, show it.
Let me just ask you a political question, and I know that you are pursuing this because you feel like you have a civic and a constitutional duty. You're passionate about it, but you're also a politician. You spend some of your time dealing with. I didn't say it was, but you spend some of your time. You have to, just by definition, dealing with politics. So, what's your judgment? Is impeachment politically? Good thing to do politically, or not a good thing to do?
I think it's a good thing to do politically. Number one, because the public doesn't have a good perspective on government, and I think if there are people believe they're impeachable offenses, they should pursue it, and they ought to pursue what their mind tells them and their heart tells them and what's right, and not be afraid. Too many politicians are afraid to take a position. And there are a lot of Republicans that can't stand Trump and they think he's done bad things, but they won't say a word about it. And I think if you see the Constitution being trampled upon and they're being the Emoluments Clause, he's supposed to come to Congress before he takes money from foreign powers, and that's to give notice. Congress can say no, yeah, but it's also to give notice so you know what he's doing. So when he goes to Helsinki and he stands there like a altar boy next to the Pope and treats Putin like the Pope, and he's there going, which vestment do you want next? You'll know why. But we don't know why because he's violated the Emoluments Clause and hasn't shown where he's getting his money from. And the same thing in Saudi Arabia. There's so many places, and that's what it's about. And I think our country has been sold out. And I think everything he's doing is for his benefit. And he's got a business. He made how much money did he make last year? 400 million, 40 million? I don't know, but he made a lot of money. And he's making it, and he knows every single business tree. He knows who stays at the Trump Hotel. He knows who's renting from him in Trump Tower. And a lot of them are foreign governments that are giving him money. And the man, he's Fred Trump's son.
So if you get your way and the House ultimately does impeach Do you look forward to using your legal skills to be one of the managers for impeachment at the trial in the Senate, making the case against Donald Trump?
If I was, that would be an honor. I don't know that I would be. There are a lot of members in the Judiciary Committee who'd be excellent at it. We've got former prosecutors like Ted Lieu, who would certainly be a person you'd look to, and there's others. Jamie would be real good. Raskin.
Right.
There are a lot of people.
But they're going to need some firebrands, and
Well,
you would qualify in that category.
And as far as the
Yeah.
politics, I think politically it helps the Democrats, because I think if you put the light on what they've done, I think there'll be more people that will support Democratic candidates for having the gumption to protect the Constitution and putting the country first. And I think that you'll have the Senate will not convict him, no question. But I think we need to get the Senate Democrat to really get legislation passed and to change this country. And the only way I think you're going to see some of those Republican senators beat is if they don't vote for impeachment. They could get beat. And you've got Cory Gardner, and you've got McSally, and you've got Collins, and you've got a couple others that could get beat because of this. And that's not the reason to bring it, but it's reality. Instead of saying, well, the Senate's not going to convict him, let the senators do what they do and let them deal with it at the polls. And I think the American public, after seeing the proof, just as they did in Watergate, will see to it that this is the most corrupt administration ever, and that they will not support a senator who didn't support convicting him or impeaching him.
And on that note, thanks for joining us once again on Skulduggery.
Good to be with you.
Thanks to Congressman Steve Cohen and Sharon Weinberger for joining us on this episode of Skulduggery. Don't forget to subscribe to Skulduggery on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And tell us what you think. Leave a review. The latest episode is also on SiriusXM on the weekend. Check it out on POTUS Channel 124 on Saturdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, with replays on Sundays at 1 a.m. and 3 p.m. Be sure to follow us on social media at Skulduggery Pod. And now you can watch the podcast on yahoonews.com, YouTube, and Roku, Saturdays and Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Talk to you soon.